I am thrilled and honored to be here with you again this year and to be invited back to be your MC for the Giants of Broadcasting and Electronic Arts Awards. I feel like it's, second time and counting, so we'll see. This year's Giants are truly as deeply inspiring as last year, so let's just get underway, shall we? Our first honoree is the quintessential role model to so many of us in journalism. To women, to Asian Americans like me, she was and is our North Star, a genuine trailblazer who literally worked at all of the major networks. But Connie Chung's career transcends gender and race. The consummate journalist, she anchored and reported on some of the most important and historic stories of the day. Connie Chung first covered government and politics for the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite back in the 70s. She reported extensively on the most monumental event of that decade, the impeachment. But between Watergate and the resignation of President Richard Nixon, she also traveled to Russia to cover the Nixon-Brezhnev SALT I talks and Nixon's final trip to the Middle East. By 1993, she became the first woman to co-anchor CBS Network's national newscast. Indeed, the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and Connie Chung marked an incredibly important milestone in our industry. During that period, she anchored stories like the historic Israel PLO White House signing ceremony and the Israel-Jordan signing ceremony in the Middle East. She covered every election during her career, dating back to 1972, and I'm sure you saw the pictures of her with every president along the way. She's anchored the Saturday nightly news for NBC, the Sunday CBS Evening News, and several primetime news magazines at CBS, NBC, and ABC. She did Face to Face with Connie Chung on CBS and 2020 at ABC. But off screen, Connie is a girl's girl, hilarious and steadfast. I won't mention her potty mouth. But she is an exceptional friend, wife, and mom. Connie, you taught us to dream big as only a true giant can. The library is so pleased to present you with this award today.
Juju's very tall. Thank you so much. It's such an honor. And despite being diminutive in size, I always thought someone, somewhere, one day, would recognize me as a giant. So I want to thank all of you Lilliputians. You all look very small to me today. I noticed that Juju's husband, Neil Shapiro, is here, but my husband, Maury Povich, couldn't be here because he's taping. You know Maury, he determines the paternity of every child in America. And I'm sitting at a table with Sean O'Boyle, who heads up NBC Distribution, is that correct? And his team of all women who work with him, and he just sits there and says, "What have you done?" And Sean, each time Maury comes back in the fall and thinks it's his last year, he's 80, and he thinks this is it, my last season. Sean said, we sold your show again for another year. And Maury says, but I was going into assisted living. Well, I've been glued to the impeachment hearings. I only have 4 minutes. So I have to hurry because Joyce is going to kill me if I go over. I've been glued to the impeachment hearings because, as Juju said, I covered the impeachment of Richard Nixon and Watergate. And when the Watergate break-in occurred, it was June of 1972, and I was covering George McGovern and his campaign against Richard Nixon, and then Nixon won overwhelmingly, as you well know, in 72. So I was back in Washington. I was told by this was in 73 or 74, when this crazy thing happened. I was told to go to the White House to keep the seat warm for the White House correspondent, whose name I would rather not say. So I'm walking up the northwest gate, towards the West Wing, and the press room is right on the side. And I'm walking, and Nixon's there. It's actually Richard Nixon. And you have to understand, he was in the bunker. He was hiding the whole time. He would not come out unlike Trump, who you can't stop talking, he was underground. And so there he was, and I went, oh my God. So I walked quickly but calmly, and the Secret Service swarmed around me, but they didn't keep me back. And I was, oh my God. So I started asking him every Watergate question I could think of. And I didn't take my tape recorder or my pen or my pad out because I was afraid he would then go away. And then the press room, which is not far, there are these big windows, they could tell something was going on. So all the reporters came flooding out. And the Secret Service kept them back. And I went, oh my God, I've got an exclusive. So I'm standing there asking him questions. And he's artfully dodging them. And then he looks at me and asks me a question. And he says, I just want to ask you, how much money do you make? And I said, excuse me? He says, how much money do you make? And I said, well, I was only like 26, and I know you're trying to do the math. I'll do the math for you. I'm 73, okay? So I said, I know. People always do that. So I said, well, I make about $27,000 a year. That's my base salary. But if I do a report for the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite, I get an extra $35. If I do a radio spot, I get an extra $25. So I kind of rack up my radio spots, and I can get my salary up to maybe $28,500 or $29,000. And he looked at me squarely and said, just remember one thing. You have to make more money. Weird. And I go back into the press room, and Helen Thomas, the dean of, UPI, dean of the press corps, saying, what'd he say? What'd he say? To this day, I don't know what he said. And that's the way it was. Thank you.